Bienvenue, I'm the Oliver Pickard. Today, I'm wearing a cardigan, which means, as well as looking fabulous, the sun is shining and the weather is nice. Just yesterday, I was fitting my new starter motor in -5. It was flipping freezing. We've had snow, we've had ice, we've had hailstones, we've had everything. But as you can see, the weather is now beautiful, which means it's time to crack on with the work on Jolene. Today is the day for sound deadening. Now, as you can hear, if I drop down a gear, Jolene is pretty loud. Like most utilitarian vehicles, she has no sound deadening, and she has a rubber floor mat. And Jolene's actually the good sounding 2CV engine, the earlier sounding engine that sound really good. And from outside, if you're being generous, you could say that she sounds like a third of a 911. And on B and D roads, she sounds lovely, and it doesn't bother me at all. However, Jolene being 6 volt doesn't have a stereo. You can buy 6 volt stereos, but I chose not to. I chose to use a Bluetooth speaker instead, because it's portable and I can take it out and it's Bluetooth and it's everything and they're cheap. Which is great, but I have to turn it up all the way because she's a bit loud. And on the motorway, going long distances, it does get a little bit fatiguing, the noise. So my plan today is to use a product called Dynamat, which is a self-adhesive sound deadening solution developed in America, very popular with hot rodding type folk. And it's really expensive, but in my opinion, if you're going to do something, do it right first time. Don't be cheap and then go back and buy the right thing later, because then you're paying twice. And it's much better to do a job once and right than do it twice. So my aim today isn't to make Jolene silent. I don't want to turn her into a Rolls Royce, but it's to keep the nice noises and get rid of some of the not so nice noises, some of the vibrational noise. It's real hard to convey sound and the amount of sound on video. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave all the audio footage raw. I'm not going to use filters. I'm not going to get rid of some of the background noise like I have on some of my other videos. A lot of people on Dynamat videos and on sound deadening videos tend to tap on panels to try and convey the sound, because it's really difficult to do on video. But you don't really drive down the road with people tapping on your body panels, and if you do, you should slow down and let them off, or preferably stop. Hopefully I can convey a bit better than that the difference in the noise. Yeah, I don't want to get rid of that noise. That noise is awesome. But obviously this isn't just a 2CV product, and this isn't just a 2CV video. This is how to apply Dynamat to any car, be it classic, modern, or what have you. Like I said, Dynamat's quite expensive, but it's worth the money in my opinion. It cost me about 150 euros and about 50 euros shipping. It's a reasonably heavy box from Amazon. One of the reasons why Jolene's so loud is because the exhaust goes forwards and then back, and it ends just in front of my feet on this particular car. Later cars it goes all the way back, but they can be even noisier than Jolene is. So this is Dynamat. I'm not using this stuff in particular because this is an advert or a paid promotion or anything like that. It's not. I'm using this stuff because I know it's good, and also because my parents lovingly bought it for my birthday because they use it in their car, and like I say, I know it's good stuff. You get 3.3 meters in a box, and it weighs about 8 kilos for this lump, for 3.3 meters. It's not cheap and it's reasonably heavy, but you won't get a really good sound deadening material that isn't heavy, because it has to deaden sound, and that takes mass. What it is like a super thick aluminium foil backing and like a bitumen-y, rubbery, Sikaflexy type gooey stuff, and it's self-adhesive and it's paperback. Dynamat recommend doing your floor and inner doors and roof first. I can't do my roof because it's made of fabric, so I'm going to do my floor and, like I said, a bit of the firewall, like at the back where the exhaust is, and the doors. I've also got a couple of panels under the bonnet that I want to do because I think they transmit vibration through the car, and they're quite thin and flexy and vibraty themselves. So we'll see how that works. I'm going to see how far one kit stretches. So luckily the seats in Jolene come out without any tools. Unfortunately, I've got really long legs. Come on, cat, get out of the way. Whoa. Being 6'6" has its downsides. Can I have a glamorous assistant, please?
No.
Yeah. There we go.
Hey.
And out we come. Okay, come through the door.
Through it?
Yeah. There we go. There we go. And we're through. Jolene has no carpet in it, it's just this rubber mat that the last owner installed. But we have to unbolt these runners so we can get it up. And then we can take the rubber mat up and we'll give it all a cleaning. The benefit of taking all your seats out is that you've got plenty of room to work. Also, I don't want to be cutting Dynamat when I don't need to be. This is part of the seat runner bracket that actually fastens underneath the chassis up, and the seat runners bolt on the top. Whenever you're taking a lot of stuff apart like this, it's really easy to rush into it, and then you come back the next day and you're like, oh god, I can't remember where this goes, or you bolt something on the wrong way around or something like that, and you end up taking the entire thing apart. The best way to avoid doing this in any sort of complicated procedure when you're doing stuff like this is to use your phone, and you can take photos of what you're doing before you take it all apart, and then afterwards when you come to put it back together again, you can look at those photos and know where everything goes. So whether it's dismantling a starter motor or removing seat brackets or anything like that, to make sure everything goes back as it was before, you've got a phone in your pocket with a camera on it. Many restoration shops and stuff like that actually have staff cameras, and each member of staff takes photos apart because one person may be taking it apart and another person may be putting it back together. Another thing you can do is get a pencil, or you can use masking tape and a pen and stuff like that, and you can actually label stuff up as you take it apart. So for instance, this would be left side seat bracket. So if I put an L on it, I know that this one goes on the left side. They might be identical, but they might not be. So if I make sure that I label everything up, if I don't finish it today and I come back tomorrow, I'll still know that this is the left side seat bracket. As you can see, I've got a wood bed on here that replaces the original ENAC metal bed. And I quite like it, even though it's MDF, and I hate MDF. It's got this nice rubber on that stops things sliding around. I don't know whether I'm going to Dynamat underneath it yet. Probably not today, because I've got enough to do today. When you're doing something like this, you should always do your big stuff first, and then your little stuff afterwards, all your cutting out and all your small pieces. Because if you do all your small pieces first, you usually find you don't have enough material for your big stuff. Whereas if you do your big stuff, any little bits that you need to cut out and things like that, you can easily find with your scraps, and you can piece it together if you have to. It doesn't really matter. Because Dynamat's self-adhesive and it's just cutting out, it's well within the realm of most home mechanics. But if you're doing a job like this for the first time, you should always remember to keep all your bits in a cardboard box or an ice cream tub or even a Tupperware tub. And if you're going to be doing it over a couple of days, if you label the Tupperware tub, it stops someone else throwing stuff away in your garage or moving stuff, or someone coming in and tidying it, and then you not being able to find the stuff the next day. I'm not going to be able to get in there, am I? Nope, that's a job for a spanner. If you bolt them back together, you know which bolts go with which rails and stuff like that when you go to put it all back in the car. One cool feature of 2CVs is that the accelerator pedal just disconnects and slides out like that. Roll this up nice and tidy. And I know the rubber floor is split, but it's fine for now. One day I want to replace it with carpet, but at the minute we don't have chip-ins out front or anything like that. And every time we get in, like dirty shoes and that kind of thing, so This is the closest thing to sound deadening that Jolene has. This is a very knackered piece of acoustic foam matting from the floor of a Diane, and it's naff. But it's better than nothing. If I do this right, I can lift out most of the crap with the matting. Come on. Now then, you can probably see from this that this is actually the chassis of my car, and these bits on the side are bodywork. This is the shell, and this is the chassis. Citroen never want to waste a bit of metal. But obviously this piece of flooring, with it being hollow, I mean, that is going to transmit quite a lot of vibration through to the cabin. Another thing you might notice is that this front piece of the floor here is a slightly different colour to the back. The reason is the rubber mat had rubbed a line in the floor, and I had a rusty mark. And whenever you're doing anything like this, you should always make sure first that your floor is not rusty or damp or anything like that. Because when you put this Dynamat down, it's down. And you don't want to be pulling it up because you can't, once it's up, you've got to replace it. So you've got to make sure that you've got no rust, that you've got no dirt, that you've got no moisture trapped under that Dynamat. Because rust is like looking after a 2-year-old. When you can't see it, you know that it's doing damage to something somewhere. So it's worth taking the time beforehand to get rid of any rust, whether that means replacing stuff or whether that means just sanding it back, treating it with rust preventative, which stabilises the rust, and then later painting it over. Here I used an exterior paint designed for like galvanised gutter work and stuff like that. So I know it's really tough, and I know it's going to last the test of time. I have to watch I don't get this trapped in the door, otherwise it will bend the door. So Dynamat comes in sheets like this, and I'm just wondering what's the best way to do it. Whether I want to go sideways like that, or whether I want to go lengthways. I don't know. So yeah, I think that's well do it. As you can see, Dynamat's really thick stuff, and it's very Sikaflex and gooey. So they say that you can cut it with scissors or a Stanley knife. Or a craft knife of your choice, X-Acto knife, whatever. I wouldn't cut this with scissors. It's way too tough to cut with scissors. This aluminium foil would absolutely destroy your scissors. It would be the last thing your scissors ever did. You could probably cut it with like tin snips, like metal cutting scissors. This rubber here was installed by the last owner. And it's kind of like the rubber that you find in the bottom of a toolbox that stops your tools shaking around. And it's also in the boot. There's a little compartment in the boot where the spare wheel used to go. And I love it in there because it stops things rattling around. In here, I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to get rid of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to Dynamat up and underneath it, I think, or at least try to. And luckily it comes away just by pushing it. I don't know whether I'm going to slice this down here and make it, because that'll make it a lot easier to Dynamat. Because the thing with Dynamat, once you peel the backing off, it sticks to everything and anything. While we're here using a Stanley knife, I just want to talk about a bit of a grievance that I have with Stanley knives. I have literally a box full of Stanley knives, and obviously I've been using them for years and years and years on boats, on cars, on everything. And they do a bunch of different Stanley knives that range from like 35 euros all the way to 3 euros. And the best Stanley knife you can possibly buy is the most basic one. In my experience, the 35 euro ones will last me about 6 weeks. simply because they're more complicated, and more complicated stuff when it gets chucked about, when it gets chucked in a toolbox, it just doesn't survive well at all. When they always end up, when you try and cut stuff, the blade shoots in and they're a pain in the backside. This is the most complicated Stanley knife I would buy. This is probably the most simple one that you can still buy with a retractable blade. I actually prefer them without a retractable blade, and I always make sure that I remove the blade from the knife and keep it in the knife while it's in my toolbox, and never ever 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 throw old Stanley knife blades in your toolbox. Sounds stupid, but I know a million people that do it and have done it, and it drives me up the wall, because always you put your hand in your box of nuts and bolts or whatever to get something out, and you're fishing around and you slash your finger open on a old Stanley knife blade. Right, I think if I cut this straight, this is going to be very thin and easily tearable, because obviously my feet are here, and it's probably the most hard wearing bit of the floor. So I think I want to cut it on an angle to try and keep as much material possible around here. I think I'm going to cut it like that. I'm using this board as a backing board because the last thing I want to do is scratch my floor to bits with a Stanley knife. Because of the way that Dynamat is, because it's made with this black gooey sticky stuff that gets all over your hands, don't wear anything nice when you're doing this, obviously. But also, I'm going to try and do as much as I can to the material before I unstick it. So I've put it up into the corner because it's going underneath this rubber mat. And I've put it up and I've kind of formed it to the shape and checked. And I don't think I'm going to cut it. I think I'm going to leave it like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel this back piece off. I'm going to stick that in, and then I'll lift it up from here. This is in theory. And then I'm going to pull it from the back like that, and then I'll stick it down and push it into where it needs to go as I pull the backing off from underneath, if that makes sense. Because like I say, it sticks like poo to a blanket, this stuff. Stick it. So now what we've got to do is we've got to rub this on and getting it out of it. Make sure it's stuck well all along. They're like this stuff sticks like crazy, but what you want to do is make sure that it's stuck to any indentations or anything like that. And then you come in here from the back. And as we pull it back, and you can see the backing and where the backing is, and then as we pull the backing away, we can just push it in all the edges and make sure there's no more wrinkles and creases. Dynamat sell a little roller for rollering it smooth. Right, I'm actually going to have to pull out the tin snips anyway, because I'm going to have to cut this to get it around the pedals. Luckily this stuff, it dints really easy, so you can just mark it with a pencil like this. It leaves a nice silver line. Sometimes the only way to do something is to just keep trying and do a bit, and then keep trying and then do a bit. So, if you're wondering what sort of pencil I'm using, this is a carpenter's pencil, because it's flat, so you can draw up to a line. It's not anything special. Ooh, just kneed myself in the face. It's not really anything special, it's just whatever I had in the drawer. We buy pens, but they tend to go missing. They get used for things like shopping lists. Am I better doing this as a separate piece? I can hear everyone at Dynamat going, yes! It's a smaller piece, obviously it's going to be much easier to manage and get into position. Come with it again. Put it here, try and shape it as much as I can before it goes in, because that'll save me a lot of work. See what I mean about it sticking instantly, even if you don't press it down. So I need to cut around the steering shaft a bit, but other than that, I'm happy. I've just given myself a Dynamat paper cut, which sucks, but I am loving using the tin snips. They're it's much easier than keep removing the panel from the car, because obviously every time you remove the panel you bend it as you get it in and out the door and all that kind of thing. So it works very well. I haven't been very precious about bolts and bolt holes up to now, because these bolt holes in the side I can get through from the underneath. But these centre ones here go into the centre of the chassis, and there's no hole from underneath. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to mark each bolt in the thing. I'm going to put something in there and just make a dint, and that way I know where all the bolts are, because the last thing I want to do is Dynamat over all my bolt holes and not be able to put my seats back in. I'm too big for cars. I haven't done the front little inner wing pieces yet, but before we do any of that, I'm going to tidy up here and put the interior up. I can't get the seat in now. How many times have I done this? There we go. I'm out of breath. So now we're going to do the doors, and then we're going to do the front triangles, and then we get to see if all this hard work has paid off. I need a flathead screwdriver. I knew it couldn't be hard. When doing stuff like this, you've just got to be very gentle. Forceful, but gentle. I've got some low spots here where the door bows in, so I've measured there, and I've measured my length, and now hopefully that should sit spot on in there. So now if I get my other one, I can draw this template back to back, because it's the reverse, and I should have the other side as well. There we go, 2 door cards. Right, no Dynamat. Dynamat. That's the difference. G-Wagon doors. These panels here are incredibly thin. They're about the same thickness as a paint tin. Like, they're really, really thin. And I think they transmit a lot of vibrational noise. I even just wiggle them to make a racket. But obviously you can't hold a full sheet of Dynamat here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a cardboard template. The only problem on this side is I have my lovely oil can and the oil can holder, and so that's going to get in the way of of getting in here. So that's going to make that difficult. I can remove my oil can, I can remove my rag. I could just take the panel off, but I'm going to try and do it in situ because it's 3 bolts that I don't want to undo. If I can do it where it is, I'm going to try. This is the piece of cardboard that came with the Dynamat. We might as well use all of the animal. So my tried and tested method for making templates for this kind of thing is to ram the piece of cardboard into place, cut the very excess off, and then trim it slowly until it fits perfectly. So I'm going to mark it with my pencil. I'm going to cut like this obvious excess meat off. We'll give it plenty of room, and then we can keep trimming until it fits perfectly. And it's a lot better to do it with cardboard than it is with a piece of Dynamat, because obviously you don't want to trim and trimming and trimming, because any excess you have left over we can use for other things, like the back doors or the boot. Okay, so I've gone in and out a couple of times. I've trimmed most of it off, but I've intentionally left a little bit of meat on the bone, and the reason is I want to be able to go over where the panel gaps meet, here and here. Try and get rid of as much vibration as possible, and I've marked it as L because this is the left side of the car, and also this is the front of left because the opposite of left, of course, is right, and that means I've got this side as well. The difficulty with these parts is that because you've cut them out with a template and they're more intricate, they're more difficult to stick on. That's the nice thing about Dynamat, you can kind of piece it together if you have to. You can't always cut out what you want out of what you've got. But if you piece it up, no one will ever see it. I've finished for today. I've done both of these wing panels. These feel loads stronger now. Both doors, the footwell and the floor. And I've still got well over a panel's worth left. So it's expensive, but it does go quite a long way. We better go for a drive, eh? Let's have a see how it sounds. Here we are again. Now, we've definitely got engine noise still, and we've definitely still got exhaust noise, but she definitely sounds different than she did before. I'm not having to shout quite as much, and considering that I've only really done the footwell, and no further up than the footwell, no further up than where my feet currently are, and I haven't put the Dynamat back in. I forgot it, I'll be honest. Which is fine, because most of you at home don't have a Dynamat. It sounds odd, but the doors do sound quietish. It feels a lot more solid. No, I definitely think there is less atmospheric noise. More of the good noise, less of the bad noise. This is third gear at 70 kilometers an hour, 65 kilometers an hour, on a hill steep enough to get me out of breath on my road bike. And it's not too bad. I'm not shouting like I was this morning, and I have more. So I could do like the back of the dashboard, I could do the back of the battery box. I want to keep it stealth, of course, but yeah, I'm very, very happy with it. So I've currently got the heater on. Let's change it to third, and then let's turn the heater off and see what a difference it makes. That's a lot quieter. With the heater off, she's super quiet. That's quiet as she's ever been, definitely. I've found a new rattle, and that's the thing with sound deadening a car. It's a bit like cleaning a house. Like, when you clean your house, nobody ever notices. The day that you don't clean your house and there's dust on the floor, everybody and the dog notices. It's really difficult to notice something that's missing, you know? You don't notice the dust that's missing, and you don't notice the sound that's missing. That's in overdrive at the speed limit with the heater on. She's a lot quieter, especially at speed. So the reduction on the motorway is going to be huge. this definitely feels quieter. But it's one of those things, like, you clean your spark plugs and your car feels faster. It's your perception of it. I think your perception can sometimes be tainted. So I'll be very interested to see what it's like when I actually edit this video. You always know when a car's quieter because you start to notice rattles and buzzes and noises that you never knew were there. I'm currently doing 70 kilometers an hour in overdrive, and I'm on a very bumpy road. You wouldn't be able to do this in a lot of cars. It's full of big, like, whoopee potholes. And it's quiet. I'm impressed. The exhaust noise is definitely still there. I'm getting too hot. I'm going to have to open a window. Is she warmer? I think she might be. I didn't get too hot this morning. I had the heater on the entire time. That aluminium backing may work as insulation because I'm roasting. She's a lot warmer. It's nearly freezing now. This morning it was nearly 10 degrees and I didn't have to open a vent or anything. I'm shocked at that. Okay guys, thank you to everybody who's been commenting and subscribing. It helps this channel massively, and everyone who's been sharing these videos on forums over on Quieter as well. Ooh. Please be awesome to each other, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Bye.
Baby, let's fly, let's soar. We'll find the space between what might have been and what happened before. Baby, let's fly so far away. We'll fill the space within what might have been with what